I want to show you some elements of Chapter 3 that are in the book and some elements that are not in the book. When I teach Chapter 3, I usually add a few kind of extra details. So this is the results file that sort of shows us what we'll be making in Chapter 3 exercises. And I'm going to go into Illustrator and create a new document. The new document dialog box is mentioned a bit later in the book, but this is a good time to start looking at the different options that you have here. There are profiles that you can choose from when you open Illustrator and create a new document. We will mostly be working with the print profile, but there also are these other profiles like web, devices, video and film, basic RGB, and so forth. If you are going to print your documents, choosing the print profile will set your document at a higher resolution so that the print comes out sharp and clear, and it will probably set the color space to CMYK. Printing is nothing that we need to worry about right now, but later on you might be thinking about printing and you may print at home or you may print at a specific printer. You might go to some place like Kinko's, and the general rule is that when you print, you ask the printer what color space you should be using. So if you would go to Kinko's, you should ask the people at Kinko's, should I be using CMYK or RGB color space? Some printers will work better with one color mode while others work better with the other. You can always change your color mode, and in fact, I'm going to go ahead and choose print, and then you can see down here, by default, I get this color mode CMYK. So if I know I want to be in RGB color mode, I can switch that. If you are just sending me files to look at, or someone on the web, let's say, if you're sending a file to view on the web, you could use the web profile, or you could simply change your color mode to RGB and change your raster effects, which is your printing resolution, to something smaller. As you can see here, screen resolution, 72 pixels per inch or dots per inch, will work just fine. We'll be able to see that clearly on the screen, whereas a higher resolution will print more nicely. You can also see that I'm going to choose just letter size paper. You have multiple artboards that you could potentially use. We will mostly be using just one artboard through the Digital Foundation's exercises, but I do have an online tutorial for creating a multi-page PDF file where you might use several artboards to do that. And then you can set your space up using points or picas or inches and so forth for units. So I could change this here to inches, and that'll just maybe make things a little easier once I get into Illustrator. So I'll press OK. I also know right now my screen resolution is set a little bit smaller than what my monitor what I usually use on my monitor. So I believe in this recording you probably can't see my entire list of tools over here on my toolbar. So I am going to press this. It kind of looks like a fast forward icon to me. I'm going to press that little button right there, and that will double up my tools. That way, within this recording, you'll be able to see all of my tools. I'm also going to bring the bottom of my document up just a little bit, just so I feel like I know it's in my space. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just moving my canvas around, my artboard around, and I'm doing that with the hand tool, which I have accessed with the hotkey with the space bar. I could also go pick up the hand tool and I could move my artboard around. This isn't moving an object, it's moving my whole artboard, so while I'm working sometimes it's easier for me just to feel like I'm looking at the center of the screen. I'm also going to use the hotkey Command 0. Command 0 on a Mac, Control 0 on a PC will resize the artboard so that it fits into the dimensions of your screen. I'm also going to just bring this palette up a little bit so that you can see everything. Okay. So I will use File Place, and from here I will place my Chapter 3 results file. And before I press place, just a reminder, you may have already seen the video for this, but there is a button here for link, and so I could link my Chapter 3 ping file, or I could embed my Chapter 3 ping file. The difference between linking or not linking, which would be embedding, is if I link the file, I'm going to have a smaller file size for my Adobe Illustrator document. However, if I want to bring my Illustrator document someplace else, for instance, to print, I would have to bring this ping file with me, because this file, if it's linked, it's basically just referenced. It's not actually embedded in the page. If I don't link it, Then my file, Chapter 3 Ping, will be embedded in this Illustrator document, which means if I would bring the Illustrator document to another computer, the Chapter 3 image will come along with it. So if you're submitting files over the internet for review, for instance, if you're taking an online class, you either will not link your files when you place them in Illustrator, or if you do link them, you'll want to make sure that you send along with your Illustrator file any referenced image files. I would say if you're new, just don't press the link button. That way you know for sure your files are embedded and you don't have to worry about remembering extra files. So I'm going to place that file and I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to grab my selection tool and hold the Shift key as I scale this file down. Shift is a key that is used all of the time in multiple Adobe programs to constrain proportions. So when I hold Shift, I'm basically telling Illustrator that I don't want to stretch, so let me do it without Shift. I don't want to stretch or skew the file like this. Command Z to undo. I want to hold Shift to constrain the proportions so that I have an accurate representation of what the dimensions of the image look like and what the aspect ratio is. This exercise, or I should say all of the exercises in Chapter 3, I think are fairly straightforward and somewhat simplistic. Especially after doing the Chapter 1 exercises, you should be pretty good at using the rectangle or the elliptical tool and using the selection tool to move items around the page. So I'm going to do just a few parts of this, but I want to show you how to work with the hotkeys and how to work a little more effectively. I also want to show you the Align panel, which is something that is new to Chapter 3. So if I were to put together this, this whole exercise, I would go ahead and start with my rectangle tool and I would draw my background color field, and I would go ahead and add some color to that. Remember that I changed my color space to RGB. I could, in here, I could go into my options and I could switch that to CMYK if I felt like I really needed to do this in CMYK color space. Since I'm only looking at this on the web, I really only need the RGB color space, which is the color space that we see on computer screens. So for now it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to print this, so it honestly doesn't really matter. But I'm going to go ahead and load a pale yellow color into the foreground. I have no stroke, right? That is turned off. If you happen to have a stroke like this by default, you can press the little no button to turn that off. And just as a reminder, in case your color panel was not visible, your colors are here. Or you can go Window to Color to open those up. And if you're not seeing the full, all of the options like I have, if you're just seeing the spectrum, you can press this tiny little button here in the left corner to expand your options, or you can use the pull-down list over here on the right side and show options. Either way is fine. With my selection tool, I'll make sure that my background color is selected here, my path for my background color. I will expand layer 1. And I'm going to lock both my path and my image. Both of those items are locked down. So now I can't move them. If I go and click and drag, they are locked so that I can't accidentally move them. It's very common to put something in the background and then accidentally move it while you're working. It can be very frustrating. With my rectangle tool, I'm going to set up just one of my 6 white boxes here, and then I'll copy that and put it into place. So again, I'll just click and drag, and because I want a square, I'm going to hold the Shift key. Now, if I happen to know exactly how big I want this square to be, there's another way that I could do this. So let me set up my square once just for good measure. So I would go ahead, I actually want a black stroke on that square and I want a white fill. So I'm going to use these little icons to set that up very quickly. I'm also going to show my rulers. Command R on my Mac, Control R on a PC will show and hide your rulers. So I could Command R to toggle that on and off. I could also find my rulers from my View menu. I feel like using menus takes more time than hotkeys, but if you need it to do View, Hide and Show Your Rulers is there. And I'm just going to sort of take a look at this box that I've drawn. I just drew this, without really thinking too much. I just kind of clicked and dragged. And what I ended up making was almost a 3x3 box, right? If I hold my Shift key and pull this out to 3 inches. Oops, one more time. There we go. So that would be a 3 by 3 box. So let's just pretend that I know that I want to make a 3 by 3 inch box. I'm going to delete this with the delete key on my keypad. And instead of clicking and dragging with my rectangle tool, I will select my rectangle tool from my tool panel, and then anywhere on top of the artboard I will double click. And when I double click, I can actually type in, I want to have a 3 inch by 3 inch rectangle, and press OK. So if there are dimensions that you know you want to reach, sometimes that can be faster. Now I'm just going to place this, I'm not going to worry too much about margins at the moment, I'm just going to place this somewhere with my selection tool, and then I will hold the Option key with my selection tool. Selection tool with the Option key converts my selection tool into a Make a Copy tool. So while holding the Option key, I'm going to click and drag. I can click and drag anywhere on the page. If I hold the Shift key, now my dragging is constrained to 90 or 45 degree movement. So if I want to make my second rectangle exactly parallel to my first rectangle, I will use the Option key. So I was holding with my index finger the Option key, with my middle finger the Shift key, and on my mouse hand I was clicking and dragging to make that copy. If you are on a PC, you will hold the Alt key. Instead of Option, you will hold the Alt key. Once my two rectangles are in place, I'm just going to kind of take a look at them. I'm very concerned when I'm setting up a compositional space with the negative space. In fact, the negative space is just as important, if not more important, than the positive space. So in this loose composition, the squares that I've just made are in the positive space, and the background, pale yellow, is the negative space. So I want to kind of be very observant and assured of what is the relationship between the squares in the positive space and the background in the negative space. From my rulers, I can drag guides. So if I put my selection tool right on my ruler and click and drag, I can drag a guide. Now, I have an 8.5 by 11 inch document, so half of 8.5 is going to be 4 1/4, and so this would be 5, so this would be 4.5, so this would be 4 1/4. So I'm going to set up a guide that just marks for me the center of the page, just so I have an idea of where I am on the page. And then half of 11 is 5.5, so this will be 5. I'm looking like right over here as my document scrolls away. That's 5. So that will be 5.5. And again, the space bar to access the hand tool and pull this all back. And Command 0 just to make sure I'm seeing everything in space. Oops, okay, there we go. So I'm going to take my two squares, and what I'm going to do, there's a lot of ways that you could do this, but I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one and hold the Shift key and the right arrow a couple times. That's going to move that box over by 10 units of measurement, in this case 10 pixels, and then I'm going to just right arrow, right arrow, right arrow, just until I see it sort of touch the grid line. And you might zoom in with your zoom tool if you want to just get a really close view to make sure you're right on the line. And then I'm going to count, shift to left arrow, 1, 2, and I'm going to stop there. I think 2 might be good. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to take the second box, move it over. I'm using just the arrows on my keypad and the Shift key to add to move 10 units at a time, and then shift right arrow, 1, 2. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out with the hotkey Command minus. So I should have even spacing between these two boxes now. And I'm going to take a look at where these are lining up. They're almost at the 1 inch mark. I feel like it's really close. I'm not so sure it's there. I'm going to pull a guide down just to see. So that would be 1 inch. So I'm going to hold the Shift key and click both of my squares. And then with the up arrow, I'm going to move these up just so they sit right on that guide at 1 inch. So now I have a 1 inch margin on the top. It looks like I have almost just about a 1 inch margin on the left and right sides, and I have a little less than that in between. You can see what I just did with my guide. If I don't want my guide on my page, I can just drag it sort of off of the page. When you place a guide, the default in Illustrator is that the guide may be locked. If it is not locked, you can click on it like I just did and press the delete key. And if it is locked, you can go under View to Guides and you can lock or unlock them. Mine are not locked right now, so I could click on this guide and press the delete key to get rid of it. Okay, Command 0 to see the whole page at once. Now that I feel like these two are set up nicely, I'm going to select both of them. I could select the first one using my regular selection tool, and I could hold the Shift key to select the second one, or deselect by clicking off. Since my background is locked down, I can click and drag around both, and that will select both together. I'm going to do that one more time. This is called marqueeing. So click and drag around both to marquee over both. And then once again, on my Mac, the Option key, on a PC, the Alt key. With my selection tool, I'm going to click and start to drag and then add the Shift key and let go. I let go of my mouse before I let go of my hotkeys. Once again, Option, click, drag, hold the Shift key. It does matter that you do it in that order. Click, drag, and then hold the Shift key. Okay. So I wasn't too concerned with the placement of these vertically. I'm now going to move them up so they're in position a little bit better. I'll shift over those two, and I'm going to just put them right on top of each other and then shift down arrow, and then take these two, shift up arrow so they're right on top of each other, shift down arrow, down arrow. Okay, I have even spacing between these. I have even spacing in the margins. I have way more spacing at the top than at the bottom, which is kind of really the opposite of what I would like to see. So what I usually do when we're framing something or matting something is I will, instead of centering something on a page, I will give it what's called a little bit of bottom weight. So I'm going to just eyeball this, but basically I want it to look like this is more or less centered with a tiny little extra bit of space on the bottom, which I just did using my arrow keys again. Another way that you can sort of measure out items on the page, this is sort of a visual way to measure, is I'm just going to throw some, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, I'm going to throw a little bit of blue in my foreground color just for contrast. You could kind of just draw a box like this, and that just tells me how much space there is between the bottom of the page and the first item of content. And then I could just move that box up here on the top, and I can just sort of get an idea. Oh good, so I can see the top is, there's a little less space here than there is on the bottom, which is what I was hoping for and what I could see visually, but it's nice just to get that confirmation. I'll hit the delete key to get rid of that. Okay, the rest of the exercises are maybe a little bit easier than just setting it up. So at this point, this is the whole kind of setup space, so I will compact layer 1 here, and then lock layer 1 down, and then I'm going to make a second layer, create a new layer, and on layer 2 I'll go ahead and add all of the circles that you would need to add for your exercise. So the circles are here in the ellipse tool. I'm going to want to have, let's see, I'll just do a switch here, black in the foreground. Click on the stroke and load nothing into it. And remember that we're looking for perfect circles, so you're going to hold the Shift key while you drag. So the point of these exercises, and I'm going to do this a little bit quickly, but the point of these exercises is to look at symmetry, which you achieve in the very first box there. I'm going to make a copy, and then make this a little smaller by holding the Shift key. And then with my Option key, I'm going to start to scroll. I'm not going to use Shift, so I can put this right there. Symmetry with 2 of the same sized, same shapes. That is reflected over a diagonal line. Symmetry is really kind of easy to see and find because it happens in nature. Our bodies are symmetrical, right? Symmetry is when we have the same kind of weight on either side of an axis. So whether it's a vertical axis or a horizontal axis or a diagonal axis, if you feel the same weight distribution on both sides, then you can say we have symmetry. Symmetry does not necessarily mean they have to be exactly the same shape and size as we have here, or two halves of a whole as we have here. We can have symmetry, even if this were just a little bit smaller, I would still call this pretty symmetric, right? This is more so symmetric than asymmetric. Now asymmetry is a little bit trickier. With asymmetry, so here we still have symmetry, but if I make this much smaller, we have asymmetry. And let me turn my guides off so we can not be distracted by those. Command semicolon is the hotkey to turn the guides on and off. Command semicolon on a PC, control semicolon. Here I have asymmetry. I do still have a reflective line. It's a diagonal line that sort of makes me aware of this idea of point and counterpoint. So with asymmetry, I can have balance. Balance is not the same as symmetry. This compositional space is asymmetrically balanced. This compositional space is symmetrically balanced. So is this one. When we're looking for asymmetrical balance, we are looking for point and counterpoint. And point and counterpoint generally happens over some kind of reflective line, usually a horizontal line or a vertical line or a diagonal line. With my selection tool and my option key, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag, and I'm going to make 4 of these little circles. So again, option, click and drag, and I'm actually going to purposefully not put them on one straight line, just for fun. And here I get to use a new panel, the Align panel. So I'll choose Window, Align. And I will remember that everything is locked down except for my circles. So I can, with my selection tool, marquee over these 4 items, and I can use my Align panel to align these objects. Now, you just have to look at what the little icon looks like, right? So if I were trying to stack them vertically, I might use one of these 3 icons. I'm actually trying to get them to line up on a horizontal line, so I'm going to use one of these 3, and it doesn't matter which one I use because they're all the same shape and size. So I'll just go for the middle one, and that will align my 4 objects. Then I want to distribute my objects. So I will again use this middle distribute by the center to distribute my 4 circles. Now look at the positive space and the negative space. My margins are a little tiny bit off. So all 4 are selected together. So when I move them, I'm moving them together. So I'm going to use my down arrow key a whole bunch of times, and I'm going to move this so that it seems like I have about the same margin space all the way around these, at least on these 3 sides. Before I deselect, and it's okay, if you deselect, you can always reselect them. I now want to group my objects, and for this I want you to see what happens in the layer panel. So I'm going to expand my layer panel a little bit here. These 4 circles are exactly these 4 paths. So the square over here, as my mouse over says, it indicates the selected art. Right? So these are the 4 that are selected. I will now choose Object Group. An object group puts those 4 into one group. They still exist as individual entities, and you can always ungroup. So grouping is not some kind of final action. It's absolutely reversible. But with these objects, with these 4 circles grouped together, now if I deselect by clicking off with my selection tool, I can easily reselect all 4 of them by clicking on any single one of them. Because they're in a group, they behave as one piece. So with the 4 of them selected now, again the option key, and I will click and drag and move these over, and then with the option key I will click and drag to make a couple more copies. So you can see down here what's happening. I'm holding the option key, and then as I would drag I was holding the shift key. So I know these are exactly in a row. I'm going to one more time select all 4 groups, and I'm going to align them here horizontally so that I know for sure they're on the left line. They should already be there, but just in case I'll do that, and then I will distribute them. Now this time I want to use vertical distribution because I'm looking at the space in between each row. So I'll distribute them like this. Again, paying attention to my margins with my up arrow, nudge this over just a little bit to the left maybe once. And see, now I have 4 groups that are selected. I can actually group groups. That's a nice little tongue twister. So I can go to Object and group those 4 groups, and now I have a group, and when I expand that group, it includes 4 separate groups, which has 4 separate paths. So one more time, the Option key, click and drag to copy, add the Shift key to constrain and copy. And I've got my last compositional space. Now these 2 pieces are basically this is a pattern. So I see these 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I see these 16 circles not as 16 circles, but I see them as a square. And we will talk a little later in the semester, and if you're watching these videos, in a future video, we'll talk about Gestalt, and we will talk about the law of similarity and the law of proximity, whereby we will see a square rather than 16 individual circles. With a pattern like this, we are definitely feeling symmetry because we're feeling the same weight distribution pretty much over every axis you can think of. In this situation, we've got the same weight distribution. I didn't talk about it here, but we have asymmetry over a horizontal axis and symmetry over a vertical axis. In this last composition, we create a focal point by changing something in the pattern space. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. Here we go. And I've just accessed my zoom tool with the hotkey spacebar command. So on the Mac, spacebar command will allow me to zoom in, and then I have to click. And you click right where you want to zoom. On your PC, spacebar control and click. You can, I'm going to close my align panel because I'm done with that. You can create a focal point by selecting one of these circles and changing its shape or its color. And that's just one way to do it. So we'll do that now. You can either find out, okay, here's my group, there it is in my layer panel. I could either expand my layer and then deselect, and let's go with, I don't know if this will be the one, but let's go ahead and click over here. Okay, that's the second row. What's this one? There's my third row. Now I could expand this subgroup, deselect, and I could choose just one of these circles. So I am actually able to select one part of a group by using this red dot, basically this red square in my layer panel. And with just that circle selected with black in the foreground, I could now change that to any color that I want to, and that will make, maybe we'll go a little less, that will make some contrast there. Alternatively, so Command Z or Edit Undo to kind of go back a couple steps, undo, undo, undo. Instead of selecting in my layer panel like this, I could use the Direct Selection tool. Now this is a tool that comes up in later chapters of Digital Foundations, but what we could do is pick up the Direct Selection tool. This tool allows us to select a part of a path, a part of an object, or a part of a group. So I have all these items grouped together, all of these singular paths grouped together, and if I click just someplace in here, I'm not going to click on that middle dot and I'm not going to click on the edge, but if I click like right around there, what happens is the path surrounding this one circle is selected. And so again, I could go ahead and change the color of that circle. And the very last, this is just a little something to see because it's in the future, something we'll look at in the future. But one last thing I could do is I could change the shape of my circle, again using this Direct Selection tool. Knowing that the Direct Selection tool is used to select just a part of an element, I can actually pick up this top anchor point. You have to make sure that nothing is selected before you do this, and then you're just going to hover over, and it really works best if you zoom in. And I'm going to hover over an anchor point, and when I find one, I'm going to click and drag. And if I click and drag, I can then change the shape of my path And in a pattern, I'm going to deselect and Command 0 to zoom out. In a pattern, if I have a shape that is transformed, then I have even more contrast in terms of making a focal point. So I might take my shape, I might use my direct selection tool still because my shape is part of a group, so I can select just the whole thing like that. You want to see all of the anchor points colored in if you are trying to select the whole shape. And then I might go grab my rotate tool so I can maybe change how my shape appears. Okay, it's a little tiny bit outside the scope of Chapter 3, but it's always nice to get a few extra little kernels of knowledge and some extra hotkeys. So hopefully this was helpful in putting together the full set of exercises in Chapter 3 and in learning something about symmetry and asymmetry in design.